everyone. Vicky Magic here with Wake Up to What Matters podcast. And today I have an amazing lady by the name of Sandra Olah. Welcome, Sandra.
Hey, Vicky.
How are you? Thank you
I'm really good
for coming on today. To start out, Sandra, I'd love you to share your really interesting story about your childhood.
Yeah, sure. Where do you want me to start? From the very, very beginning?
Yes, I think from the very beginning would be amazing.
Okay, so I was born in August 1967. My birthday's coming up in a few days, woohoo. And when I was about 12 years old, I found out after a bit of a, I wasn't cooperating with my mum very well, and she told me something that I kind of didn't want to hear, and at the time it gave me a bit of a shock. And she said, one day your sister's going to tell you something and you're going to appreciate me more. And at that point when she said that, I don't know, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea where it came from, and I looked at mum and I said, what, that I'm adopted? And I had no idea. There'd never been a conversation at all in my whole life about being adopted. And I looked at mum's face and I knew it was definitely true. And I was absolutely devastated. I didn't want it. I didn't want to hear it. And I threw myself on the bed. I cried. And then mum sat next to me and she consoled me and she told me that she loved me. And it didn't matter that I was adopted. In fact, it was even better because I was more loved, because I was a gift to them. So through that conversation, it opened up a new world to me that I had mixed feelings. One side wanted to know why my biological mother didn't want me or didn't love me, and I felt pretty sad about it. And I really didn't like her when I learnt it. I didn't like what she'd done. But I'd also learned in that conversation with my mum that a young boy who was 15 at the time had found me. So he'd found this little baby that had been left under a holly bush in England in 1967, and he'd been walking along and heard what he thought was a little kitten cry, and when he went to investigate, he found me wrapped up in a towel. So he pulled me out of the bush, and he ran me over to his mum. And his mum then, got me off to the hospital and, cut a long story short, my adoptive parents came into my life because they were foster parents, and then they moved to Australia and I began a life over here. So there's been a couple of little chapters to my life, and, even though I didn't want to hear the news, I kind of took it with a positive. As in, and one thing I learned from you, Vicky, is the bits.
Yep.
We all get our different little bits. And I don't know what her bits were at the time, where she couldn't, she was young, she had a child, she wasn't married, she didn't have any support. And, what were her bits? Her bits were that she just couldn't look after a little baby. So, so cut a long story short, when I was 50, we kind of figured that it might be a good time to reach out and find a little bit of the family history. So unbeknown to me, Bill secretly put a little post on Facebook which said, Sandra would like to find her family. And with that, everything just fell into place. A friend of a friend sent me a link to a group that unite families together, and I sent a little bit of information off to them. They wanted a little bit more info, which I then found, and I ended up finding a link to my brother and my sister and my mother.
Wow.
And it's a very exciting time of my life.
Yeah. And just kind of fast forward just a little bit there as well about the actually meeting that young boy that actually found you.
Yeah, that was such a highlight. It wasn't planned to meet Martin. I had planned to meet my biological family, But Martin was just like, hopefully we connect up, but nothing had been previously arranged. So we went off on a whim. We caught a train down into the Basingstoke Shire, and I had emailed the local paper if they had a story at all about a baby that had been found in August 1967. And they came back to me a week or so later, and they shared with me the front page news of the paper of late August that year. And it had an article there about a baby that had been found in Broad Lanes in, a certain spot in England there. And with that little bit of information, they had a little bit of a location. They put Martin's name in it, the boy who found me, and his age. So I knew with that little bit of information, I had a location to go to. So when we got to this tiny little village, an absolutely beautiful little spot, it's called Kingsclear in Basingstoke Shire. And we went to the local shop, and we thought, we'll go in there and, they might know of somebody that's still around in the area that might remember. And it was new owners. They were young, and they definitely weren't the original owners. It was like a bit of it's probably going to go nowhere, that little self-doubt thought. But I thought, I'm going to ask anyway. So when I approached them, they suggested that I go to the aged care, which is behind them, like one street behind. So we went to this home, this aged care facility, and walked in the office, and I asked, did anybody know of Martin Palmer? And as soon as I asked, I just could feel a change and a shift in energy, like things were just happening. And one of the girls got on the computer, and when she shared the information, she gave me Martin's phone number, his sister's address, and had shared that their mother, Irene, that was their family home. So that place was where I'd been taken as a baby, bundled up just after I was found. I was in exactly the same location.
Wow.
And it was just amazing. And with that information, we ended up going down this little village called Tubbs Lane, where there's no numbers on the houses. It's just like Rose Cottage, or all these names of flowers and really quaint names, and knocked on a couple of doors, and finally knocked on the right door, and Martin opened the door, and I just saw this, this older fellow there. He would have been 65 by now. And I said, hello, are you Martin? And he said, yes. And I said, Martin, give me a hug. I'm the little baby that you found 50 years ago. And it just blew us both away, which is such an amazing emotional moment. It was so,
That's amazing. Oh, I just love it. And it's just uncanny how things do unfold, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So Sandra, that's an amazing start, obviously, to your life. Through your life, what would you say? Obviously, this podcast is all about inspiring people and giving them some tips and information that's going to potentially help somebody that might be struggling with life or, with mindset, that sort of thing. If you were to sort of think about, how far you've come yourself and the things that made a big difference along the way for you that you might like to share with our listeners today.
A big thing for me is I love reading empowering books. So it's all, Richard Branson and Tony Robbins, and I've been to an event with Tony Robbins, and I've done lots of them with you, Vicky, and I love them, and I love the way I feel during and after, and it just lifts me right up. And then it's like this big lift, and then life happens again, and then I do something else to give myself that lift. Like at the moment, I'm right into Joe Dispenza. I just can't get enough of him. I think he is just incredible, and how he is like, it's not healthy to live in memories of the past, because we tell ourselves certain stories that may have a different twang on it than actually is real. And his big philosophy is living of what you want to be or see in the future. And it's a much nicer feeling to go for that than it is to be stuck in the past. Yeah. So he's my guru. So I've always got a guru going. That is my big thing. That keeps me kind of, you know, moving forward in a really positive way. Yeah.
And I love that what you're saying as well about, you know, so many people spend such a lot of time in the past and, you know, dwelling on the past and angry about the past. And, you know, they take themselves in the present back to that pain and bring that pain into their presence. And, you know, so I love that Joe Dispenza stuff as well, where he really is about stepping into your future and seeing yourself the way you want to be in that future. So yeah, it's pretty impactful, isn't it? Like, it really does make a massive impact on your life. If you were to sort of share with somebody who's listening to this on how you actually do that, what's the methodology that you would share of how you do, you know, say, for example, you do start going back into the past and getting upset about something, or, you know, angry about something, or whatever you do, how do you then bring yourself out of that and into thinking about the future?
The most important thing for me that I do often, and I've got so much better at it, and it comes with practice, and it's from Eckhart Tolle, and it's like being conscious of that thought. So if it's not an empowering thought, you don't need that thought. And once you catch yourself in that moment of that negative energy or that negative thought, once you catch it, you have a chance to throw it away. And that's the most empowering thing that I do for myself. And it really, really does work. It's just that catching yourself and getting into that habit of going, oh, okay, I've had like a little self-doubt thought. I don't need it. Flick it off, move on. And, you know, once you shift your thought pattern, you're away from it. You're all good.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing too. And certainly this has been the case for me. And as you know, what I teach as well. But the more that you practice it, the better that you get, don't you? Yeah,
definitely.
So somebody kind of starting out, it is really about taking a baby step, isn't it? And just keeping on practicing and practicing and practicing.
It is. And it's even having the realization that you're thinking like that. Because you've thought that way for so long, it's just a natural way to think, because you haven't been taught in school. You know, my parents never taught me, you know, that you don't have to think negative thoughts. You have a choice. So once you kind of get a grasp on that there is a choice, it's really powerful and it's great. And it's a much nicer, healthier way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find as well, because I certainly do, that the more that you change your way of thinking, the people around you sort of tend to change as well? Do you find that it's a bit of a ripple effect?
I do. It's slow.
Yeah.
Like I would love those around me just to be on the page, more advanced than I am, so that I can get it all off that, you know, I can be empowered by them. So it is happening, but it's a bit slower than probably what I'd love, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why when we do our magic retreat and we're all on that same page and we're all vibing off each other, I just absolutely love that energy, because we're all doing it. We're all learning the same thing and we're all doing it. It's awesome.
Yeah. There is really something to be said about surrounding yourself with people that lift you up, isn't there?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah,
but that potentially is another tip that we can share with the listeners as well, that really finding people that help light you up.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, you might be a support person that person needs lighting up, and that's your place in the moment to light them up. And don't feed into the talk. You know, it's nice to have a nice conversation and create a shift. You know, and all you have to do is like just add a different perspective in, and you can shift that conversation into, you know, something that's really positive.
Yeah. So are you talking at the moment, and this is great because obviously this happens to people all the time, but are you talking about if somebody is talking kind of about something negative, how you help them shift. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I won't jump on board with whatever the complaint is. I will throw in another angle.
Yeah.
And the other angle is always a positive angle. And it's like what I do with my own self. You know, if I have that little thought where it's a negative thought, I catch it and then I shift it. And then I'm not stuck in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is such a brilliant tip, I think, as well, because every one of us, either ourselves go down that negative track, or we know people that constantly go down that negative track as well. So it's a really good tip to help people to get out of it themselves, and also to help other people out of it too.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's true, what you focus on grows.
Yeah.
So if you feed it, like you said, if you kind of, oh, you poor thing, oh yeah, tell me more about that terrible situation, what happened then, then it's actually feeding it, and it's getting bigger for them as well, isn't it?
It is. And life's too short, right? You know,
absolutely.
We want to enjoy the ride, you know, let's not get bogged down on the, you know, on the wrong ride. Let's just, I just read something in this book. It's so cool. Can I share it?
Yes, of course.
I just opened up, I got out all my books because I was going to say, I've read this, and I just opened one and I read this little section. I thought, this is awesome to share.
Yeah.
It says, always remember that you are the driver of your bus. It's the most important of the rules, because if you don't take responsibility for your life and control of your bus, then you can't take it where you want to go. If you're not the driver, then you'll always be at the whim of everybody else's travel plans.
Yeah. I love it.
You know, you're the driver of your own bus. Make it a good ride.
And, you know, I often say, you drive the bus. You can drive it off the cliff or into bliss.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to drive it, you choose. And when we really do understand that we're the ones in control, it gives us the power to have that control, doesn't it?
It does. And you can drive your bus singing a song, Happy as Larry, or you can be driving the bus miserable and cursing everyone around you. You know, what's the better choice? It's a no-brainer. You know, jump on the good bus, you know, the fun bus.
It is a no-brainer, isn't it? But isn't it interesting how quickly it can turn? And how triggers can turn you quite quickly. You know, you might have a couple of triggers and then you're jumping on that horrible bus. And, you know, once you start getting conscious of it, then that's when you have the power of, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to be driving down that road. You can be driving up that really cool road. Yeah, absolutely. And you seem, and obviously I've known you for a long time, and you do really seem so positive and happy a lot of the time. When you're not, does it last a long time, or is it fairly quick for you to get out of it now?
It's quick for me to get out of it now. It's really good. Yeah, it's quick. It's just that catching it, and I have the opportunity to flick it. And one thing I learned a long time ago, and it was from doing landmark education, and how when we get how we react to things, and everybody reacts different ways, and it can be from our upbringing, it can be from our environment, it can be from how our parents were, whatever. And one thing I learned about me was my coping mechanism was I used to do the silent treatment. So my strong suit was like, you know, I'm not talking to you. That was my power of punishing somebody else because I wasn't happy with them. But what I was doing then, say Bill and I got in an argument, I wouldn't talk to him for a whole day, or I could drag it out to 2 days, right? But what happens in that day or that 2 days of not talking, you're not enjoying life.
No.
So the only person I'm really punishing was myself, you know, and I got that. And that was really great to get, because that was the way I was being and I didn't realize I was. So by doing something like Landmark, it really made me understand my behaviour.
And you can't change something until you actually understand it.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't change something that you don't even know is wrong.
Yeah, and you've got to ask the questions.
Yeah.
You know, why am I feeling like that? Why did I react like that? And then once you realise, well, when I grew up as a child, I was so powerless. The only power I had was to not engage. And that was how I could make other people suffer, you know, because I had suffered.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing how...
But then you realise that you actually were the one suffering. It was like, you know, you drink, you give someone, you know, you drink poison and you're the one that's going to die, aren't you? You know?
That's right. That's exactly right. And then you're missing out on the fun because you're being a misery.
Yeah, absolutely. So for my last question, I'd love to know, and I'd love to invite you to share. So you've shared obviously along the way things that you've learned and things that you've been able to learn along the way. But if somebody could have given you one of these tools that you now have when you were really, really young, what's a tool that you wish that you'd learned earlier? So all these different tools that you've learned over the last, you know, however long, what's one that you think, oh, everyone should teach their child this tool because it's life-changing?
Awesome question. I probably would have loved to have learned earlier about being nicer to yourself with your self-talk. You know, because we all naturally do self-talk, but be nice to yourself. You know, like don't throw, you know, you're not good enough or I can't do that or whatever. Just be more empowered. I think that would have been awesome to learn when I was younger. Just more self-love and talking to yourself in a nicer way.
Yeah. And did you teach your children this from a younger age?
No.
Okay.
And you know what? It's not too late because I am now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. It's never too late. That's right.
Yeah.
Never too late. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Now, just before we do go, is there anything else that you're really desperate to share with our listeners before we go?
I wrote a little quote, and this was a quote from my dad, and he had written it in his beautiful handwriting.
Yeah.
And it's something that always struck me, and it's a really good one. And it says, "Blessed is he who expects nothing, for he shall never be disappointed." I thought that was really cool. If you're not putting expectation out there, then you're not going to hurt yourself by not having that expectation met.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. I think that we've actually covered quite a few different inspiring tips that you've been able to share with our listeners today. And yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, Vicky.
No problem.
See ya.
See ya.